Score Atlanta Television Studios in North Atlanta. This is Georgia High School Sports Daily, powered by IBEW Local 613.
Welcome to the Georgia High School Sports Daily Show, powered by IBEW 613. I'm your host, Craig Sager. I am joined here by Max Walborsky. We're going to start our Monday like we always do with our fast break headlines, but real quick, our guest today is going to be a jam-packed show. We're going to have Hayden, Gilbert joining us. We're going to have Najeh Wilkins, Todd Holcomb, Mike Phillips, and then Creekside's head coach, Maurice Dixon. So we'll try to pack it all in, but we'll go ahead and get started with the fast break. First off, though, Max, welcome to the show.
Thank y'all. Excited to be here.
All right, so I got the first one. There was a 6 overtime game between Ringgold and North Cobb Christian. North Cobb Christian is ranked number 8 in the Class 3A to A private. They improved to 5-0. They won the 6 overtime thriller at home 41-39. Ringgold hit the field goal with less than a minute left to push it into overtime, and they won on a decisive 2-point conversion. It was an even matchup going into it, but North Cobb Christian, I like their team. They're ranked for a reason, but Ringgold, they were also a top 10 team in 2A. I'm going to move on to headline 2 with some cross-country news featuring Collins Hill's Jamison Pfeiffer. He won the boys county title in Gwinnett with the fastest time, but the depth for Brookwood propelled the Broncos to the victory. They had 5 runners finished in the top 28 of Saturday's victory. Jamison's top time was a 15-minute, 58-second, and 68. Brookwood's coach, Ben Dinky, said, "It's a much different group that we had last year. We graduated 4 of our top 7 guys. We finished 3rd here last season, so being able to outlast a really good up-and-coming North Gwinnett team and county competitors was a great outcome for his team." All right, we'll move on to headline 3.
Back to football for headline 3. Darlington iced this game against Whitefield Academy. They won 27-20 off a late pick from Sammy Konzinski to seal the game after Sammy's touchdown on the the drive before helped seal the game for the Tigers.
And real quick on that game, so Whitefield Academy was the team that knocked Darlington out of the playoffs last year, and so it's a tough matchup at Darlington. They were obviously very motivated, and that win by Darlington actually put them in the rankings, which we'll talk about in our rankings segment. But let's go ahead. We'll move on to headline 4, bring Najeh Wilkins onto the show.
All right, what's going on, y'all? So number 4, East Coweta going to softball. They remain undefeated, one of the top teams after a 6-1 win against Northgate. Peyton Robertson, she opened the 3rd inning with a walk, and Addie Joyner doubled to put runners on 2nd and 3rd. Madison Weathers brought home the runners with a single. Jada Savage hit a bomb to right center, giving the Lady Indians a 4-0 lead and full control of the ball game. Northgate got a run in the bottom of the 5th when Ella Oswald singled to help Magner score and bring in a run. Savage of East Coweta pitched a complete game, a 5-hitter with 11 strikeout to earn the win. East Coweta head coach Franklin Deloach said this post game, it was a good game. The girls played on both sides, and that is what you want in a non-region game. The pitchers played well. The girls made some defensive plays at times, and we had a good competitive game, which both of us need at this point in the season. All this is via Noonan Times Herald. Number 5, we're back to football. I wanted to bring this team up. Me and Craig have had the coach on our previous podcast, Coach Bell. But Southwest DeKalb is off to their best start since 2019. They're 3-1. They finished 9-2 on 2019. So they had a big win against North Springs, 63-point win, 70-7 in that big win for them. They used their defense and some trickery, staying undefeated against the winless Spartans. Teron Essex got a defensive score with a pick 6, and Romeek Thomas caught an 80-yard bomb on a double pass from fellow receiver and Georgia Tech commit Sam Turner. Panthers are now 2-0 in region play, and they will play St. Pius X this Thursday in a home game at Buck Godfrey Stadium in a must-see matchup.
That game will be Thursday is what you said?
Yes, sir.
Okay, short week. And then just real quick on Southwest DeKalb, when you look across DeKalb County right now, you got Stevenson playing well, Miller Grove's trying to get back up there, but do you feel like Southwest DeKalb has reached that top tier?
Yeah, I agree. A great question by you, Craig. I think they're there. I think what stood out the most to me when I talked to them this offseason is the speed they have. So many of their players was running track and doing really well in that. So when you have that and you have that speed on the field, and then you have another year at the helm for Coach Bell, and he's able to install more of the offense and able to install different things and culture things for that group. I think it's all just coming together, and they have so many different weapons that can come and hit you. So I definitely think they were one of the classes of DeKalb County.
It's a great point. They won 2 track and field state titles in the last 3 years. All right, well, let's talk about our game from this Friday. Just on the offset, I thought the quote that we got from Coach Appling after the game, great interview by Kaylee, said it best. He said, this was old school Buford football. And it might mean something different to him, but for me it meant Buford went out there. Didn't matter if there was a lot of turnovers. Didn't matter if Douglas County was producing plays. They overwhelmed them with athleticism, physicality, and just were relentless. They ended up running away with it and looked very talented. So I'll start with Najeh, then we'll go to Max. Najeh, what was your takeaway? Because you predicted Buford to win this matchup.
Yeah, my biggest takeaway is that, like you said, they made mistakes, but it didn't seem to alter the team. Like, it was almost to a degree like they made the mistake and the defense got fired up. Like, let's go get this ball back to our offense. So that stood out to me. And then just the speed they had. Like, they were able to run the ball. Like, what is Buford known for? Running the ball. Justin Baker, 2 touchdowns early in the game. And they established the tone early on, with that. And then I thought Montrez Walker had a pretty big game as well, including Jaden Parlati, with just the big hits they were making. And peep this, Craig, only 62 rushing yards in this game for Douglas County. I know they got big threats on the outside, Eric Gregory and obviously Devin Carter, who are studs. But when you able to kind of shut down that running game, which Douglas County has been kind of known for to start the season, I think that says a lot about the physicality and what Buford is really known for.
This is a Douglas County team that rushed for over 400 yards against Newton. So that was a big question mark. Buford had some big stops early on. We'll talk about the turnovers, but Max, you had a bunch of notes on this game. What stood out maybe outside the turnovers just from Buford in this win?
For sure. And when you look at these 2 teams, you really look at how talented both these rosters are with commitments all over the board. And when you look at Jaden Parlati, Bryce Perry Wright, and even with Justin Baker as well, Buford really looked like they outmuscled Douglas County at points, and really with their defense kind of just hit them harder than they're used to, and limiting the threats on the outside really was big for the Wolves in the end.
And talk a little bit more about the Buford offense.
Raiola looked comfortable in there. I think he only threw 15 passes, but he still found his receivers, found his guys, and that touchdown to Jordan Allen, the one that we were talking about before the show, was a great throw by him.
Yes, it was. And so, Najeh, I want to ask you about Buford real quick. It was a little sloppy for them, but in the end, if they just go out and play aggressive where they aren't afraid to turn it over perhaps because they have confidence in their defense, do you think that might be the style we see Buford with moving on in this season, where they've got to just go out there, play high energy, and just try to get all their guys involved?
100%. I mean, it was working in the Douglas County. You're probably going to see them down the line. But, yeah, I think you have to unload the offense. You can't be afraid of Dayton Raiola or one of your running backs making a mistake. You got to play smash mouth football, depend on the running game, and allow those guys to flourish, because we've seen a little bit of that playmaking ability from Raiola on that bomb to Jordan Allen. So I thought that was huge as well in that one. I did want to bring up real quick before I talk about you, Craig, this point about Douglas County. You got to find a way to get your playmakers involved. Like Aaron Gregory, Devin Carter. It doesn't necessarily have to be deep balls. Like, you could do those slant routes, hitches, deep corners, outs, whatever it may be. You got to find a way to get those guys the ball. They are too good to have the stat lines that they have. Now, Gregory did have 4 catches, 91 yards in that touchdown, but still, they need to be more involved in the offense. I get you want to run with Zamarcus Lindley, but get those guys more involved, and I think the offense can finally start to hit the groove.
Yeah, I'll ask Max real quick. What do you think that the lessons Buford can take away from this matchup? They're going to have Carrollton coming up. Do you think that maybe losing this one the way they did, the turnovers might sharpen them up a little bit?
Buford or Douglas?
Douglas County.
Douglas County. I mean, yeah, just kind of like a humble game. Just kind of like get right game. Just feel like you're playing a good team, obviously, and you know what you're going up against. But now it's kind of like, okay, we lost. Let's see what we can do and regroup to get back to how we were playing football before. So I just think it's just kind of like we'll see where we're at, kind of just like a test, and then we'll be geared up for Carrollton.
Absolutely. And the highlights from this game were unbelievable. We'll go to a couple of them right now. These are the electrifying play of the game brought to you by Inlet and Stubb. We'll see if we have that one up first, but also some highlights. Here it is, the electrifying play. This was an answer to Buford's early touchdown, an absolutely beautifully thrown ball to Aaron Gregory. And that's what you guys were talking about, trying to get him involved. And that was
by James Johnson.
Yeah, James Johnson with one of the many turnovers in this game. It was pretty wild. How many turnovers were there total? I honestly lost count.
9 turnovers.
9 total?
Yep.
Okay. And how many were for Buford? How many were for Douglas County? Was it 5 Buford, 4 Douglas County? Well, there you go. So what do you think? We'll get to the rankings. Do you think Buford proved that, I mean, they are that top contender? Would you still put Carrollton slightly above them?
I'll give Carrollton the slight edge. I mean, when you're able to do that, the gains more later, but 45-16, I mean, I'm very high on Gainesville, especially this season in 5A. I think they're one of the contenders along with Milton and Hughes. But when you're able to do that, and the crazy part real quick, Craig, Julian Lewis didn't even have a big game. He was like 15-18 for 140-something yards and 2 touchdowns. They just beat them in other ways, and I think Carrollton has so many players they can get the ball to.
And then Douglas County is obviously a young team. What do you think that playing this game, losing the way they did, do you think they're going to maybe cross paths with Buford again next season and want that get-back game?
They're definitely going to want to get back. They're definitely going to come back. I mean, they had some good plays in the game. Like, they were, in some stages of the game dominating. James Johnson was just hard-hitting the whole game. I mean, they got players. All they got to do is iron out some things on offense. Defensively, they're going to have to get the defensive line together. They didn't have Jordan Carter in that game, who's a top 2026 recruit. So they got a lot of injuries right now. They can get healthy, get that offense going. They're going to be a contender. When you look at the contenders real quick, Craig, you're going to have Buford. You got to throw Grayson in there, Carrollton, DC. Those are the top 4.
Absolutely. All right, well, we're going to get more into this in the ranking segment coming up after the break. But for now, we will throw it to the break, come back with the rankings rundown.
The Georgia Sheet Metal JETC equips apprentices with the knowledge and skills required to start a rewarding career in the sheet metal industry with programs in HVAC, industrial welding, and testing, adjusting, and balancing. Training is 100% free and allows apprentices to earn as they learn. Journeymen graduate with no student debt and have the potential to earn more than most college graduates. Visit our website to learn more about this opportunity at careersinsheetmetal.com.
This makes my dad proud. He went through his whole career as an employee. Now I'm the employer, something he didn't achieve.
We are signatory to IBEW, and the IBEW people, wherever we go, that we feel like they are faster than any of our competition.
The advantages of being a signatory contractor is you're trained employees. You have unlimited manpower. It allows me to bid on jobs that I ordinarily would not go after.
You know how to do this?
Man, I don't even know. I was flipping burgers last week.
Violation, unsportsmanlike conduct, impersonating a craftsman.
Skilled trade unions are well-trained career pros, not part-timers. Construction is a rewarding and lucrative career with advancement potential, but you have to do it the right way with the right training. Learn how you can be a pro. Find your career at GeorgiaConstructionCareers.com.
Great teams are committed, focused on the details, and work hard to be their best. From practice to games, right down to their gear. Field is a critical part of the game that allows your athletes to showcase their athletic abilities. Sports Turf is committed to bringing your team innovative sports services with unparalleled performance. You keep a vision. Our team brings it to life. Georgia High School Sports Daily is brought to you by the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local 613. Electrify your career.
All right, welcome back to the Georgia High School Sports Daily. I'm joined now by Hayden Gilbert and Najeh Wilkins. It is time for the rankings report. Week 5 football rankings will start in 6A. It was shaken up, and I had to eat some humble pie. Douglas County was my number 1. I bumped them down to number 5, put Carrollton up to number 1, and then Buford a jump to number 2. I feel like this is where people had them, but it was kind of like a wait-and-see game for me. But Buford definitely impressed. Hayden, welcome to the show. What's your thoughts just on 6A so far? Do you agree with this, and where would you have put Douglas County?
I think that's about where they belong. You look at, you're like, okay, your top 4 teams, Carrollton, Buford, Valdosta, North Gwinnett, are all really good teams that haven't really shown that they haven't had that game where they show that they're not a great team. Douglas County came out and kind of got punched in the mouth. They struggled at times. They were coming off that Hughes game, and they are really injured. They lost their star right or left tackle, who's 6'8", 340 pounds, a great guy, and they're going to have to learn how to play without him because he tore his ACL and is out for the season. And not having the top player in the state in the 26 class, and Jordan Carter, really also hurt. But I think they'll be better off for it in the long term because of everything that they have. And now they sit there and go, hey, it's a wake-up call. We're not as good as we thought we were. We have to get better. And, they may see Buford again later in this season.
Yep, and I feel bad because I don't have Lowndes ranked. I don't have Grayson. And trust me, I know how talented they are. There's a lot of teams knocking on the door. What do you think, though, of just South Georgia in this poll? You mentioned Valdosta, Camden County, Colquitt's hanging on there, but out of the Camden and Valdosta, who do you think is going to take that Region 1?
That's really tough. Like right now, we have Valdosta ranked as top, and their quarterback / running back / athlete Todd Robinson is one of the fastest rising guys in the state. But then you look at Camden County, who has Elias Williams, who is, as our friend Rusty says, the biggest freak he's ever seen in his 20 years of covering Georgia high school football. And then Colquitt County's traditional power. I don't think they're as good as they were last year, but they're still really good. And then Lowndes is that team that is that fourth team that you're like, okay, this team's had 2 down years, but now they're 5-0. They're undefeated. They haven't had a game that they've played within 15 points. I don't any of those teams can come out. I think right now Valdosta is the favorite, but if you told me that Lowndes came out and won it, I would not be shocked.
I agree, and then Richmond Hill's actually been playing really well too. But let's bring Najeh on right now. He breaks down the 5A rankings. Najeh, what did you do this week just in terms of the movement?
Yeah, so obviously Mo stays number 1 for me. They just beat Blessed Trinity, a really good team in the Class A 3A private, 28-14. Luke Nickel had a pretty good game. CJ Wiley had that 90-yard touchdown reception. He looks really good. So I got them 1, Hughes 2, Thomas County Central 3, Coffee 4, 5, Gainesville, Lee County 6, Hodgson County 7, Roswell 8, 9, Decatur, and 10 Rome. So Decatur made their first debut in this poll. They've been having a good season. They're undefeated. Also for Rome, I put them back in the poll after their win against Spalding, 27-7. So I thought that was big for them. They did lose to Toombs County and Carrollton, but those are 2 top teams in the poll. So I'm like, they're still a good team. They're expected to win that region. And I just moved Gainesville down a little bit. I still think they're a top 5 team. But after that loss, I had to move them down a little bit. But Thomas County Central looks really good. I'm really high on them, and I think they're going to have a special season. Yep,
Decatur has been great. And then you mentioned Roswell and Rome. I thought their response to losing last week, especially Rome, was very impressive. They dominated, so that was a good sign for them. Let's talk about 4A. We mentioned some injuries. I'll ask you first, Najeh, because you brought it to my attention. Brody McCorder, Cass's quarterback, they dropped out of the poll this week, and it looks like he's going to be out for the season. What did you hear on that?
Yeah, so breaking news, guys, he has a fractured fibula, so he is done for his junior season. He put it on his own Twitter page at Brody McWhorter, so I think that's huge for them. They've struggled the last 2 weeks. They got a big matchup coming up against Cedartown. I don't know, man. It's going to be hard for them to make some noise. Coach Gates is a phenomenal coach, but when you don't have your star quarterback in and you've already been kind of reeling, I think that's very difficult for them to overcome. So it is unfortunate news. He also had an injury to, I believe, one of the Ellis brothers, who was also out for the season early on. I believe he was committed to Appalachian State. So 2 major injuries this season for Cass, and it's kind of tough for them.
That is a tough break, but Cass will be in the Corky Cale Dave Hunter Classic. So if Brody's back next year, we're going to get to see him recovering from that injury. Let's go to 4A real quick. We'll stay there. But North Oconee, I thought their win over Jefferson, we had Coach Arndt on the show last week. The way they won that game, he kind of downplayed the youth. But in terms of just an impressive victory, Hayden, what do you think that that statement win is going to do for the Titans heading into that region?
It's huge for them. Like the last 2 years especially, they've kind of walked through that region because the region just wasn't that great. Like, no, I don't think any teams last year made it out of the first round besides them. And then the years prior, there one other region championship. The year before those 2, they were in a good region, but now they're in a really good region. East Side's there. That team's going to be really good. They play East Forsyth next, which is undefeated. They're a young school. It's hard to really get a good grasp of how good they are, but they're still undefeated. It's still going to be a tough game. So I think this is a big win. It's against a coach they know really well in Travis Nolan, who was the former Oconee County head coach. So it's just a huge win for them. It gets a lot of confidence, and it's against an area rival and a former regional rival that they're able to get this big win and kind of get that monkey off their back of one of the probably the toughest game in their non-region schedule.
Yes, it was, and we'll see where Todd put them. I'll ask him later on. But sticking in 4A real quick, BT, they had the loss to Milton. I thought they played pretty well. They hung in there. Warner Robins, very dangerous team. We mentioned Eastside, and then I put Cambridge in this week. I thought they have definitely earned a spot. There are many more in 4A, but let's go to 3A real quick and talk to Najeh about that. You got Sandy Creek number 1 in 3A. What else changed in the poll this week?
You got 2 Monroe area. They keep their spot. Peach County is also 3. Long County moved up big for me this week to number 4. Defense has been pretty impressive. Only 7.5 points they've given up per game this year. 5 Westover, they moved into the top 5. Jefferson moved down a little bit to number 6. Then you got LaGrange, Northwest Whitfield, Mary Persons, and Upson Lee for the number 1 team. Sandy Creek, they continue to establish themselves as a title contender. I think 31-0 victory against Upson Lee, who's a top 10 team. They look like the real deal. Dalen Pitson had 2 touchdowns in that one. So those are the big movements, Westover top 5 and also Long County.
All right, moving on to 2A, Pierce County absolutely dominated New Hampstead. We had their coach on this week. He was talking about the contrast of style. He said, with New Hampstead, we aren't going to play many teams like that because we're in 2A. They're a larger classification. They're going to work us sideline to sideline. Well, the result was them outgaining them 503 to 88 in total yards, a 48-7 victory. So between Milton and Pierce County, those are consensus number 1s in their classifications. Pierce County is obviously the defending state champs, but that win that they had over New Hampstead was certainly impressive. Let's go down, though, to Class A Division I, Toombs County at the top. Najeh, did anything shift in the poll this week?
Yeah, so for this one, the top 4 pretty much stayed the same. Fitzgerald picked up a big win against Brooks County, 23-13. Fannin County shut out Coosa, 42-0. Toombs County continues to roll. They beat Charlton County 56-18. Couple idle weeks in here as well. Raymond County looked good. He was able to finish off a late touchdown. And number 7, Bleckley County also kept its ranking as well. So not too many changes in this one.
And then real quick, you mentioned Fitzgerald. They had the big win over Brooks County. Talk about Class A Division II real quick. Who's standing out in that classification?
So for me, it continues to be Bowden. What they've been able to do, 35-21 victory against Heard County. Caden Prothor had another big game for Bowden, continuing to do his thing. Irwin County has scored 55 points in 3 of their first 4 games. They did it again against Dooley County, 55-7 win for them. Clinch County handed Mitchell County his first loss of this 28-8 win. So they've been doing their thing. And then 5 Seminole County, 6 Treon, 7 Greene County, 8 Metter, 9 Lincoln County, and 10 Brooks County.
All right, and then finally, Class A Division A, 3A private. I'll ask Hayden about this one. Just looking at the top 5 particularly, who do you think can challenge Savannah Christian?
I think Hebron's really good. Like we got to see them in Cork Hill. We got to see what they did at Thurl. And there's a lot of talent on that team. John Seichin, I believe is how it's pronounced, their interior defensive lineman is really good. The receiving core is really good. They have a pair of legendary head coaches in Bruce Miller and Jonathan Gass. Miller is their offensive coordinator and Gass is their head coach. And if anybody can challenge them, though, that coaching staff has the experience to challenge them. And then you have Prince Avenue, the 2-time defending state champ. They looked great. Andrew Beard had over 300 yards of all-purpose offense and then 5 touchdowns against, I believe, Johns Creek on Friday. It was just really impressive. And then you look at Athens Academy. Like, they've had a few down years. Like, the last 2 years have not been great, but before that they were great, and now it looks like they're back to that form. So,
yeah. No, certainly they have had an unbelievable start. Well, that's it for the rankings report. You can go to scoreatl.com. You can look at the movement right there. But we will be back with our next segment, an interview with Creekside head coach Maurice Dixon.
I'm doing good. How you doing? Okay. Okay. No problem. Thank you for having me.
Georgia High School Sports Daily is presented by GeorgiaConstructionCareers.com. Transform your future today. And by Smart Local 85. Sheet metal is a smart move.
Welcome back to the Georgia High School Sports Daily Show. We're going to be joined now by Creekside head coach Maurice Dixon. I got Max Walborsky with me, and we'll ask about their recent win and then their start as they open up region play. Coach Dixon, thank you so much for coming on. How's it going?
I'm doing well. Try Pride, guys. Thanks for having me.
Tribe Pride indeed. So when you guys had this game last Thursday, I knew it was a big region game. You guys have been all over the country pretty much. And I was like, I feel like Creekside, they're going to be relieved to be back in the States, playing in the region. You guys got the big win. Just how did you guys celebrate it, and just how did it feel just after that crazy start to the season?
It was just more validation of the process. Going into the season, we know those 2 weeks were going to be really, really tough on us, playing two teams with that quality of opponent. But just getting back into Georgia, going through kind of a normal routine, even though the game's on Thursday, not having to travel so far for a game. All of those things were great. And our kids just were happy for the opportunity to go out there and display their talents and show off for Creekside.
And then I want to ask you about that DeSoto game, because I was looking at the stats. Obviously didn't get to see the game, but it looks like you guys didn't really give up the big play. You guys were in it. You competed. Obviously the score didn't turn out your way, but were there any things you were able to take away from that experience?
Going into the season, we've had so much success over the last couple of years in the program. And so, what I try to do is try to not to get entitlement to creep into the program. So going out there, I knew it was going to be a tough game, and our kids did go out there and compete well. But I wasn't concerned about the scores more as I was concerned about the effort, because I knew as a coaching staff, we want to use these two games to evaluate our team and coming into region play, put our guys in the best position to be successful.
And then talk about the most recent win. What stood out in that one, and who kind of impressed you just with their effort and maybe growth within the season so far?
For us, everything kind of revolves around quarterback play. Hayden Benson has a chance to be a really, really good player. For us as coaches, it's creating an offense that fits his skill set. And for him, it's learning how to, play quarterback at the varsity level. This is his first year playing varsity. So not turning the ball over, leading his team, playing with tempo. These are things that he has to work on to be a good player.
And then, Coach, going back to your two matchups to start the season, how do those matchups, those out-of-state matchups that we've seen more and more in high school football throughout the years, how do those prepare your team for the long run?
Well, you just in the playoffs, you're going to go on the road and you're going to play in hostile environments. So for us, it's getting that out of the way early so our kids kind of know what to expect. Going to a South Carolina, you don't really have an idea of that team, and the style of playing that state is different from Georgia. And then going to Texas where the rules are completely different. They play by NCAA rules and we play by NFHS rules. So that's what the kids got to get used to. And, just seeing kids that play at a high level and coaching against coaches that have schemes that are very complicated and complex and allows their kids to play at a high level really helps us for the playoffs.
And, Coach, you're talking about the quarterback play, but defensively you guys got the shutout against Forest Park. What did you like just about the tone you guys came out with and just their ability to shut them out for 4 quarters?
Well, we had beforehand we had struggled on defense the first 2 games, and it's just really about getting the right fit or the right group of kids out there. I think we kind of got the right group in the secondary, and they played with a lot of continuity. Zach Carter had a really good game for us. And in the box, I put out box against anybody in the state when everybody's healthy and playing well. And that's what you saw. You saw a healthy team, and everybody was out there that was supposed to be out there in the right spot. So that's why I think they gelled and got the shutout.
And then you guys played on Thursday, so were you able to maybe scout a game on Friday, or how did this weekend go for you?
Yeah, I went out and, I'm a lover of Georgia high school football. So I caught the beginning of the Banneker and Langston game, and then I headed over to Cobb to catch the rest of the Pace and Mays game. So we was able to scout both of those opponents, and they're going to be 2 tough teams to play in our region.
Yep, and Mays is a team, we've watched them a lot over the years. I feel like they are very explosive. They're great at coming back if they're down. They can score in a burst. So what about this Mays matchup is going to be a unique challenge for you guys?
I think Coach Austin is doing a good job in his first year over there of getting those guys to play hard and be disciplined. You combine that with a player like Clayton. I don't want to get his last name wrong. Copwood, number 1 for him. I feel like he's one of the best playmakers in the state. He's the guy that, you get the ball in his hands, he can change the game and flip the dynamic of the game really, really quick. They're very stout on defense. So it's an interesting matchup. We're looking forward to playing on Friday.
And then in terms of this region, I don't have last year's in front of me, but it looks like there's not really any other Fulton teams on there. You don't have the Hughes. They're in a different class. So who's kind of the more familiar rival within this region for you guys?
Well, we've been in the region with Mays and Midtown. This will be the 3rd year in the region, not Midtown, Maynard. We've been in the region with them for the last, this is going on 3 years. So it's a familiarity there. We were in a region with Drew and Forest Park 2 years before that. So, we kind of understand who they are and what they're going to do. We haven't played Pace before. We haven't played MLK before. So those are 2 new guys. But, we're just going to take it 1 week at a time.
And then go ahead, Max.
Coach, I was just going to build off that. You're back-to-back region champs this past 2 years. What goes into really sealing that region championship and really securing that 3rd region title in a row?
We talked about the formula early. We schedule tough in the preseason and in the non-region schedule. So that prepares us to hit the ground running when we go into region. And then we take every game, 1 game at a time. I take it from my buddy, Coach Boone in Langston. The goal is just to go 1-0 every week. And if you do that enough times, when you look back, you'll have a region championship.
And then in terms of your skill guys offensively, at the receiver position, who have you seen really step up, not only just with the timing with your quarterback, but the blocking in the perimeter and just fighting for those extra yards?
I really feel like we have one of the best receiving corps in 4A, headlined by Dylan Vickerson. He's a big target, but what I would love to see him is how he's evolved into being a leader of the group. His work ethic is matching his talent. And then with the growth of guys like Eric Paul Jr. and Damian Henderson, those guys were integral for our success last year as 10th graders. They're juniors, and then Armani Hill is going to be a sophomore. They're going to have a major impact for the offense too. So those group of guys we feel really, really strong with. Another kid is Cedric Kelly. Those kids have been good for a long time, and just to see them work and involve and to get to the opportunity to display their talent is going to be awesome.
And is Ced Kelly, is he related to Shane?
Yeah, that's his younger brother.
There we go. Well, we know how good he was. And then real quick, Coach, next year you guys going to still schedule a bunch of out-of-state games?
Yeah, the goal is for us not to go on the road next year. A lot of those teams will be coming to us. But again, we're going to try to schedule as stuff as possible to get prepared for our run and win the 15th game.
Fantastic. Well, Coach Dixon, thank you so much for joining us. Best of luck versus Mays, another big region matchup, and we hope to see you guys later this season.
All right, thank you so much. Pride.
All right, so we'll be back with Todd Holcomb on the other side to talk about the Georgia High School Football Daily newsletter.
What happens after you graduate? Will you go to the next level? People have the heat of the battle. Will you still train like a champion in pursuit of greatness? You will when you become an IBEW electrician. Join our team. Visit IBEW613.org.
The Mechanical Trades Institute is an opportunity towards personal financial freedom through hands-on and rewarding work. Our school is completely free and gives apprentices the knowledge and skills required to gain access to a lifelong career path. Apprentices learn pipe fitting, plumbing, mechanical service, and welding. They earn money as they learn and graduate with no student debt. Start a career with the Mechanical Trades Institute and change your financial future.
Dang, where you get this car?
You need to join the union.
The union?
Absolutely. You can get sent of these.
Union construction workers earn the highest wages with the best benefits and the most protection in the construction industry. Find your career in construction. Go to GeorgiaConstructionCareers.com and start your future today.
A journeyman with local 85, when you turn out, you can be hitting six figures.
Okay, I have your back, you have my back. We're going to do this together. We're one for all for one.
College just wasn't for me. Let's look into actual career jobs that wouldn't take college where I wouldn't lose money and all that. Instead of losing a lot more money at the end, why not make money and make more money at the end?
All right, welcome back to the Georgia High School Sports Daily Show. We will be joined momentarily by Todd Holcomb. I've got Hayden Gilbert. Right now, we're going to go through the Monday edition of the Georgia High School Football Daily newsletter with Todd Holcomb. Todd, how's it going?
It's going great. Thanks for having me again.
You bet. So we're looking forward to hearing your take on some of these results. But let's start with the newsletter and what's featured every Monday. It is Chip Say's Say It Ain't So. And one of the games on this list was the Lakeside DeKalb win over Arabia Mountain. That was on Thursday, a wild matchup. So obviously IJ's happy about that. But it looks like Lakeside might make the playoffs for the first time in a while. But what else happened this week that was featured in that segment?
Well, yeah, of course, Lakeside is IJ's alma mater, so he's happy, and they haven't been in the playoffs since, just once in the last 25 years. So, but yeah, the biggest upset was Mount Zion beating Stevenson. So Stevenson made the quarterfinals last year in Class 4A, and Mount Zion beat them in 2014. Mount Zion, they were a 34-point underdog according to our computer Maxwell rating. So that was a pretty cool outcome. We talked to Willie Binyard, who's the coach of Mount Zion, in our 4 Questions interview as well. We can talk about that later too. But some other games that were in that group was Sprayberry beat Sequoia 31-17. We put Sequoia in our rankings last week. I don't know if you guys did. We put them up to 9 because they started 4-0. And Sprayberry came and beat them. They were like about a 14-point underdog, and they won by 14. So, yes, I think Sprayberry's got a decent shot to make the playoffs suddenly. And that was another one. Chattahoochee beat 11-point favorite Centennial, and Chattahoochee's 4-0 for the first time since 2010. So yeah, that was another one. Groves down in Savannah, they ended a 27-game losing streak. They beat Islands, another team from Savannah. So those were some of the kind of upsets, and not all of them involving like big name schools that we cover in how our top 10 fared, but we always like to give some attention to those teams that pull upsets.
Yeah, the Sprayberry win was massive because they lost to Pope in their region opener, and then for them to come back and have that big win, I think it was 31-17, definitely a great response to a team that has had good starts in recent seasons, but has had some tough luck in region play. So that was a big victory. But Hayden, let's talk about the big wins from Friday.
Yeah, so Todd, there were some really big games on Friday. Buford, Douglas County, Gainesville, Carrollton, and Milton, Blessed Trinity. What are some of the biggest wins from this week?
Well, I think you named most of them there. Buford and Douglas County, that was kind of the game of the week. One was ranked 2, the other one 3, at least in our rankings there in the highest class. And, Buford was our preseason number 1 team because they, as I indicated last week going in this game, I still feel like Buford has more good players, major D1 guys than anybody else. They looked a little sluggish against Milton, but wasn't anybody, 13-10, they lost that opener. But I think they kind of reasserted themselves as, like, I think we might be the team to beat. I mean, they won 31-14 against a really good Douglas County team that has such great skill position players, a wide receiver, and some big name players as well. And Buford pretty much controlled that game. I think they had over 400 yards total offense or offensive line, which may be the weakest part of Buford. Is not weak, but they control things as well by, I think they opened the second half with about a 9-minute drive, and then Buford allowed 56 yards rushing. Douglas County had 3. They were averaging about 300 coming into the game. So pretty impressed with Buford. I really think Buford and Carrollton, I have a hard time seeing anybody else winning that high class. Carrollton was another big winner. They beat Gainesville. We expected Carrollton to win. They won 45-16. Because Gainesville is an impressive team, well coached, a lot of good players. They know what they're doing on offense, and Carrollton just showed that they were in another class. And so it looks to me like it's coming down to beat Carrollton and Buford. Some other pretty good teams that I think could beat those teams in the playoffs, but I don't think anybody can beat both of them.
Yeah, and Todd, Buford, since they've gone up into the highest classification, they've had some very competitive, tough games. But do you think this is probably one of the biggest wins since they've gone up to 7A or 6A, just in terms of showcasing that the sheer level of talent they have on that roster?
Yeah, I mean, I'd have to go back and look and, see if they've had any other wins like that. I mean, I remember they played a team a couple of years ago. They opened up with a nationally ranked out-of-state team. They kind of dominated and I forget exactly who it was, but I mean, it made me think that. There you go, yeah. And it made me think, oh, okay, well, they're going to dominate, but then they didn't quite do it. But what happens is, I don't think it's so much Buford is. They've slipped up in the playoffs. They've had teams good enough maybe to win it a few times in the highest class. I guess it's the 3rd year in it. But it just shows highest class in Georgia is just dang tough. I mean, you can get knocked off in the second round, and even when you don't necessarily play bad, there's just so many good teams you can play. So it's just getting through that gauntlet, But and I wouldn't say this is necessarily the best Buford team, most talented they've had, but it's still, good enough to win it. And just really impressed with the defense, front seven. I mean, they're just going to be a tough out.
Yeah, they produced so many big plays when they needed it. All right, you talked about Mount Zion. You had a conversation with Willie Binyard after the big win, the upset over Stevenson. Just what stood out about your conversation about him, what they're doing in Jonesboro?
Yeah, I thought that was probably the best thing in our newsletter today. I just noticed that they had the upset, so I gave him a call. And here's the situation at Mount Zion. Okay, they have not had a winning season in about 10 years. So 3 years ago, they had an opening in the summer. They were on a 20-game losing streak, and Coach Binyard applied for the job. A lot of his mentors told him, don't take that, because it's your first job. You're going to lose a bunch of games. It's going to make it hard to get a second head coaching job. And the athletic director there, Coach Battles, Charles Battles, talked him into it. Said, you've been in Clayton County for a while. You kind of know how it works, and he's just been able to build it. I mean, they're not great. Yeah, they're just 2-2, but I think they'll make the playoffs, which is pretty good compared to, losing, being 0-10, which they'd been. And also keep in mind, this team is, they're practicing at Morrow because their field is under reconstruction. So they're having to go 15 minutes to play, just to practice every day. So just overcoming a lot of obstacles.
That's great. And then we got one more big topic. I saw it going viral. Max Price was covering it. Hayden's got the numbers, though.
Yeah, so Georgia is, according to y'all's newsletter, the #1 state in the country per capita putting players into the NFL, and 4th overall just by pure numbers. It feels like over the past decade or so, Georgia's really closed that. Georgia was always one of the top 4 states, but it used to be Texas, Florida, California, and then Georgia. But it feels like Georgia's really closed that gap. What over the last decade do you think has helped Georgia to do that?
Well, first of all, you're exactly right. A lot of people think it's just always been that way. Like we track NFL draft picks. If you go back into the 90s, there would be maybe 12, on average, 12 players drafted from Georgia. Now it's like 23, 24. It's doubled since the 1990s. As far as what's happening, I just think it's just Georgia continues to put a lot of resources into high school football. They hire really good coaches because they pay more. And I think the players in Georgia are more well developed, and they're ready to go in college, and and then population growth, and the sport here, football in Georgia continues to maintain high popularity, if not grow, whereas in other places is flattened out a little bit. So just a lot of factors like that. And I mean, Georgia, yeah, they're top in per capita. That's pretty impressive.
And then real quick on our Hall of Famer that's featured, that is Alfred Jenkins. I feel like he's one of these guys where he had a great high school career, maybe went a little under the radar, and then once he went to the NFL, had an unbelievable career as well. So what stood out just Alfred Jenkins in this profile today?
Well, I grew up in the 70s, so I knew who Alfred Jenkins was for the Falcons. I really didn't know what kind of high school player he was until, we did some research, and then, because he wasn't on the ballot, I think, until this year. And then he goes straight in once we have a lot of the background information to confirm how good he was in high school. But he was a quarterback in high school at Hogansville, and was played both ways. Excellent basketball player. Hogansville had super basketball teams. He was just the best athlete in the school. Went to Morris Brown. He had said that it was because he didn't plan on going to college and he didn't have great grades. But then he was like an academic All-American or something at Morris Brown. So just went from there and had a great career with the Falcons, all-time leading receiver a few years ago.
That's right. And then let's go over the trivia question from Friday real quick. The answer, Carrollton and Gainesville squared off the other teams that are highest in the state for all-time wins. You had Valdosta, LaGrange, Gainesville, Marist, Thomasville, Woodward Academy, and Carrollton. That is the top 7. And then Monday's question, Cherokee Bluff head coach Tommy Jones got his 100th victory when his team defeated Banks County 42-0 last week. Jones has more than 25 wins at 3 different schools. What are they? Hayden, do you know this one?
I do, and I'm not sure I'm going to let you
go
say
for it. You go for it. I don't know it.
So his first stop was at Lumpkin County. Then he left Lumpkin County, went to Decula, and then after that, after 2 region titles, he decided he was going to go from Decula to Cherokee Bluff. I know Coach Jones pretty well. When I was at Fly Branch, he was our #1 substitute. If ever you needed a substitute, he was there. So we knew of him, and he came over and has done a really good job at Cherokee Bluff. They've won 2 region titles and are looking for that 3rd one this year.
That's right. All right, well, we'll be back with our final segment with Mike Phillips after the break. Welcome back to the Georgia High School Sports Daily Show. I'm joined in studio now by Mike Phillips, the area coordinator for the Adapted Sports Program in Gwinnett County. Mike, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
You bet. So first question, just as area coordinator, Gwinnett's a pretty big place, a huge population. What's your role just as area coordinator?
Well, my role is that I coordinate the Adaptive Sports Program and for the school system, and it's very multifaceted. I'm almost like the athletic director, where I go out and try to recruit students for the program, take care of all the paperwork, order equipment, uniforms, all the stuff that you need to do so that we can put the team on the court. And I've got coaches. I have 3 coaches that are teachers in the school system that coaches the 3 teams that we have. So my role is to support and to do everything I can so we can field the teams for the program.
And before the show, you were talking about your experience within Gwinnett County, coaching, teaching. When did you decide to take this endeavor?
Well, I started my education career in 1979, and then I retired in 2008 from Grayson High School, assistant principal and athletic director. And our current AD at the time, Mike Emery, had been to a conference and saw the Adaptive Sports Program presentation from the American Association of Adaptive Sports Program, ASP, and realized that there was a segment of our students that we wasn't reaching with athletics, and that was students with physical disabilities or orthopedic impairments. And so that he got excited about that, came back to the county office and went to the procedures to getting the program approved. I retired. The timing was just perfect, and it was approved. My position as area coordinator was approved by the Board of Education, and I applied for it, and they hired me, and I started the program in 2008, and we fielded our very first team, wheelchair basketball, in January 2009.
Okay, and so that's what I wanted to ask you. That's a huge part of our state championships each winter when we have the basketball. So when was the first adapted basketball championship?
For us, it was, I believe, in 2012. The program we started with 2009, we started with 6 players, and then 4 years later, the ones who were seniors that year won our first state championship at the Gwinnett Arena. We beat West Georgia for our first GHSA Wheelchair State Basketball Championship.
I think that's the West Georgia Wolves, and then the Houston County Sharks. They've been a powerhouse as well. But you guys have 3 seasons. It's handball, football, and then is it track and field in the spring?
No, it's handball in the fall. We're doing handball right now. Basketball is in the wintertime. Wheelchair basketball and wheelchair football is in the spring. And then the wheelchair track program is also in the spring, and students who participate in that actually participate at their home high school. And they don't earn points for the track meet that they participate at home high school. They actually compete with other students across the state of Georgia that happens to be doing wheelchair track at their school, and then if they qualify, then they get to participate in the state the state track meet at the end of spring.
And these are obviously co-ed sports, but these are opportunities where an athlete might be able to get involved early and have a lot of years competing on these teams and being a part of this.
Yes, the program's designed for students between K to 12. However, if you're playing varsity like we generally do most of the time, you're going to be going against pretty good athletes and high school athletes, and you don't want to take somebody in the first or second or third grade and put them up against those older kids. They'll get intimidated. But we have had students that have started as young as second graders, third graders, and a lot of it has to depend on their wanting to be there, their maturity, but we go slow with them. Like we've had students before that they start as a second or third grader, and they see the competition and the chairs banging, and students, sometimes an athlete may fall in a chair, and they may say, well, I'm not ready to go into the game yet, but we'll practice, and as they get a little bit older, we'll get them in a little bit game just for a moment or two and get them out. And then as they mature and get better as an athlete, then they become, where they can contribute and play more and really have a good time with the program.
And so it looks like wheelchair basketball might have been one of the first, but you guys have the wheelchair football now. Can you explain that a little bit?
Wheelchair football starts right after wheelchair basketball, and everything's played on a gym floor, and it's played with sports chairs. I sort of compare it to arena football. We play 6-on-6. It's a lot of passing. Obviously, we don't have kickoffs, but what we do is we'll throw the ball from one end of the court to the other will be a kickoff. We can punt the ball. We can't run fake punts or things like that. If it's 4th and 10, we can tell the team we're punting. We'll throw the ball. You score a touchdown by crossing the end of the goal line or the baseline in the basketball court. That's a touchdown. And then for an extra point, we line up at the top of the key, and you throw the ball over the backboard, and the edges of the backboard are like the goalposts, and the ball has to go over the backboard, and if it does that, then it's good. And we can also attempt field goals. Same thing, goes over the backboard, and we get 3 points for that.
Okay, and then the Paralympics for this year, they're obviously going to return in 4 years. We had, I think, 6 athletes from Georgia bring home a medal. Do you feel like what you guys have been doing, the growth of it, that we might see even more success in 4 years?
I think so, because parents who have students that have the physical disability, they have the same goals and aspirations for I think parents would have able-bodied students, and one of the ways that they get to help them is getting them to participate in adaptive sports. There's a lot of adaptive sports out there. I'm not familiar with all of them, but they tell me that wheelchair tennis is one of the fastest growing adaptive sports programs out there. So these students want to be an athlete. They're competitors. They work hard. They're probably some of the hardest working athletes I've been around, and I've been involved in high school athletics my whole life, even as playing as a student and being a teacher and coach for all these years, an athletic director. As soon as they get in that sports chair, they don't consider themselves having a disability. They're just playing a sport, and it's like a football player playing a sport with football equipment on. The sports chair is just a piece of equipment everybody has to play in.
Well, thank you so much for joining us in studio. Really appreciate it. We'll be covering that as the seasons go along. But thank you for everyone for tuning in. We'll be back tomorrow, and also go to scoreatl.com. We'll begin to preview our big matchup this week, North Cobb and Walton.
Hey, is the power off on this?
I don't know. Just take it off.
Safety violation, unsafe work conditions.
In the construction trades unions, safety is our highest priority, and we train you to recognize and speak out on unsafe working conditions so that everyone arrives and goes home safely. Learn about careers in construction at GeorgiaConstructionCareers.com.
Beginning the morning you opened your eyes, we spent every waking moment preparing you for the day you'd leave our nest. Whether it's driving to practice or helping with homework, it's all prepared you for what am I going to be when I grow up? Will you be ready?
After Coach Stahl, I made my decision to take my talents to the IBEW Level 613.
The International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers is not simply a job, it's a career. Visit IBEW613.org to begin a new future today.